Hi, can you hear me? Is it
Yeah, I
working?
can hear you just fine. What country are you from?
Originally Lebanese.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah,
Okay. Where do you live
crazy,
now?
right?
Or you don't have to say if you're not comfortable.
In the UK, but
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Are you a
cool.
Brexiter by chance?
I didn't really follow
Oh,
Brexit that much. I have no strong. I'm kind of like against it just for the free travel, but I'm not that invested.
gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay, what are we talking about?
So it was I don't know if you remember. It was like 2 days ago on Reddit. You said something about or sorry, I said that like, or I was arguing with someone else about Trump.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, he's an authoritarian. I said, what's he ever done, to fit that label? And this guy mentioned that Trump's against free speech, and his example was it was like a quote by Trump that he wants to expand libel laws. And I said that's not really the same thing as being against free speech.
What would
And
it
then you
take for
jumped in
someone to be
and
against free
flamed the shit out
speech?
of me.
Yeah,
Sorry,
what would it take for someone to be against free speech, do you think?
be against free speech would be I don't know, to like put unnecessary restrictions on speech that go beyond like
Wait, so when you
suppressing
say
like danger and
unnecessary
stuff.
restrictions on free speech, wouldn't like widening libel laws for the president to be able to sue the press when they say mean things about them, don't you think that like kind of directly.
Well, there are already libel laws. It's not like a new thing.
Well, but when you talk about expanding them, you're talking about creating a new thing, right?
But I mean, not creating a new thing. It's expanding them. It's taking what already exists and like you
Okay,
know,
so if we define
beyond
some space and we say that something occupies some space, and there is some
right.
space that's not being occupied by that thing, so then you
Mm-hmm.
take the original thing and you expand it to occupy space that wasn't previously occupied, wouldn't you say that you have like created something in that space that didn't exist before? I feel like this is
Mm,
like a really weird semantics. Like, let's say that I made
it
it
is. It
so
is
that
kind
I
of like a
opened up.
semantic.
Yeah, because let's say I made it so I opened up libel laws so that if you call me an asshole, I get to execute you. And then you're like, well, hold on, this is kind of like a really new scary thing. And I'm like, well, no, I'm just expanding libel laws. Isn't that kind of a silly way to look at it?
Yeah, that is a silly way. Okay, I can see your point there,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I guess
like I
like
don't think
the thing that is bothering me right now, because I don't know who you are or what you think, is that like to me it screams obvious that when the president of the United States says that he wants to open up libel laws in order to sue members of the press for saying bad things about him, that screams unhealthy to me. Like, oh,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
hold on. He specified not just bad things, but like untrue things, right? So I think there's like a very important distinction there, right?
So
If I call you an asshole,
Trump has a track record for lying constantly. Do you agree or disagree with this?
yeah, I agree.
So is it kind of worrying when somebody that has a track record for constantly lying is saying that he wants to be able to sue members of the press for lying?
Mm, I mean, presumably it would apply both ways, right? So I don't think that's particularly worrying.
Like, what are some of the lies that Trump has accused the press of that you think he has grounds of which to sue them? Because things that I'm hearing about are like the entire Russian investigation, like,
Mm.
is a lie. Even though over 30 credible indictments and 8 convictions have been turned out from it, like, what are what are these lies that Trump needs to be able to sue the press for?
I, I really don't have those on hand. I don't know if I can give you like a super specific example off the top of my head.
Well,
You'd
sure.
have to
So,
ask him,
like, I
really.
guess I can. Well, I mean, I'm kind of aware of it because I live here and I follow it all the time. I'm not, that's not a slight against you, but just because I hear this all the time, it just seems very strange to me that like if you get a guy that is consistently attacking people, say their right to protest in free markets. So, for instance, like giving his opinions on the NFL stuff with Colin Kaepernick is very
Mm-hmm.
scary. Making tweets about how like people that burn the flag should have their citizenship revoked, talking about changing the ways in which citizenship is even given, that people born in the U.S. shouldn't be granted citizenship anymore, and then talks about wanting to be able to sue the press, which is one of our most important institutions against politicians. Kind of seems a little and then does it all under the guise of being massively pro-America, pro the people. It just seems a little authoritarian to me, I guess.
Well, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between being able to like sue the press and being able to stop them from doing, what they're doing, right? So if he said he wants to not allow them to, do that kind of stuff, that'd be one thing. But he's not saying that. He's saying he wants to be able to take them to court, and then the courts can still find them, like, can still absolve them of any guilt.
Well, no.
So,
There's not really much of a difference there. The reason why the bar is so high for public figures that want to sue for defamation is because the reason why that bar is set high is because what you don't want is you don't want people who are scared to publish a story because they might get sued for libel. That's the whole reason why that standard is set the way that it is because if you make it so that it's incredibly easy to take somebody to court for posting something that they might not even know is wrong about you, that all of a sudden news stories aren't going to be published at all just because people might be scared of being taken to court over it.
Right, but under the current laws, as I understand them, I'm not like a lawyer or anything, but you have to like to sue for Trump to sue someone for libel in the media, he'd have to like prove that they knew that it was false at the time that they wrote it or published it or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and also that they're using it maliciously. And I think that's maybe,
Well,
but I think
but then we don't need to expand anything. He can already do that if he wants.
well, that's my point. Is he? It's like almost impossible to prove that someone's trying to public or use something like that maliciously. Like, how do you prove that in court unless you have like I don't know audio recording of that person saying they want to use it to like take you down or something like that? Like, how do you prove that?
Yeah, it's really hard, but it's supposed to be because you don't want to create like I think it's called a chilling effect, is what Apple said. Like you don't want to create this effect where it's and first you wouldn't necessarily need an audio recording. I'm sure there's other types of evidence can be thrown in there. But regardless, the point is that it's supposed to be really hard because you don't want media outlets to be scared to publish stories against the government. Right? Like this sounds like I feel like I'm talking in an anti-authoritarianism right now, right? Like you would never want to create an environment where your media is scared to publish bad stories about the government because somebody in the government might sue them.
Well, sure, but you also don't want to like create an environment where people can just say whatever they want, you like make up stuff completely,
Yeah,
and
but
you
again,
know
they
post
already
you know the
but
Infowars style of doing stuff.
yeah, but they can't do that. Those laws already exist.
I know, but I'm saying like it's not so crazy to make an argument that you could like shift the laws a little bit one way or the other. Trump saying he wants to make them, expand them a little bit. I don't think that's that outrageous. It might not be like
Okay, how
the
would he
greatest idea,
expand
but it's
them? And
not like
can you give me
super.
an example of how you would expand this in a way that wouldn't be scary or reek of authoritarianism?
Um, Give me 1 second. Let me take a quick look at exactly how the law is phrased right now, and I'll get right back.
Well, I mean, this is going to be like a variety of laws or whatnot. I think
Yeah,
it's
but
the
I
New
mean,
York Times versus Sullivan is going to be where the public defamation standard was set. But
all right, give me 1 second. Let me just look that up real quick.
well, but like I don't even think the exact specific thing is important. I just the idea
If
that
you're
you're
if you're asking me for an example, I need to know
well,
like what
I
it
guess
says.
I just like the problem is that like when I hear a head of state saying I want to be able to sue the media, that just sounds really authoritarian to me. It sounds really scary. Unless you can give me, or how about instead of asking, can you give me examples where the media has committed these great, horrible sins that Trump feels like it's necessary to speak out against it? Like, what are these horrible, malicious lies that the media is publishing that Trump needs to get a handle on? Like,
There was one not that long ago actually when I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to do with like immigration. When like an immigrant has like a kid in America, they become like a citizen
yeah,
when they're born.
yeah.
And some news organization, I forget which one it was, like put a story that Trump's kids wouldn't have been citizens under like his proposed changes, and that was just like flat out false. Like that's just an example.
Trump's children wouldn't be citizens under
Yeah,
proposal. Let me find it.
let me see if I can find it too. It was retracted, I think, like the next day or something. But let me see if I can find it. It's on Snopes actually.
Yeah, but it looks like this was posted by, I'm seeing bloggers. Was this actually
I,
posted by like a credible
I
news organization or?
I'm pretty sure it was. I'd have to like go back and find it, but I do remember like something.
So I'm looking at like the Snopes thing, and I see tweets were posted, and then on PolitiFact it cites bloggers, but I don't see like an actual news.
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding it too. It might be because it was retracted, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing this on like a legitimate like news website. I just can't remember which one. It was such a while, like it's like 2 3 weeks ago.
Gotcha. Is there like anything else? Because like I don't even think even if that. I mean, firstly you said it was retracted. Secondly, I don't know if this is a lie that's big enough that it
It's
warrants
probably not, but
making it so
like
that our government should be talking about and threatening to sue members of the press. When Donald Trump points to a member of the press and says, "You are an enemy of the people," like this kind of stuff doesn't feel like maybe this is a little bit unhealthy. Maybe this is like a little authoritarian kind of when the head of
okay,
state is attacking the press
I'll
and saying the press is the enemy of the people.
I'll give you that, but like I think there's like a big gap between Trump's rhetoric and Trump's actions in a lot of cases. So like I don't
What do you
see
mean by there's a gap between his rhetoric and his actions?
he says a lot of shit. I think pretty much just to like get people fired up that he knows he's not going to follow up on a lot of the time.
Okay, you know that as the president of the United States, your words are your actions to some extent. The things you say matter. You can't just get up and say a bunch of like random shit, right? Like it. And also,
I
like he
mean,
literally
you
pulled
kind
like,
of can.
well, no, you absolutely can't. It would be like the CEO of a company can't do it either, right? A CEO of a company can't go on Twitter and go on a racist tirade and then go, well, listen, my actions aren't bad. Like it's going to impact the company's stock, right? Look at Elon Musk and how
Sure.
much of an impact. So like the president of the United States has an impact on the way that we view our country, on the way that we view our constitutional rights, on the way his constituents, view
Oh,
everything.
sure, but like that can affect your opinion of him. That can affect like like not his policies. That can affect like some parts of the way he runs things. But I don't think that would make him an authoritarian necessarily. Just if he says something like that.
It feels like you're infantilizing him to like an absurd extent. Like you're literally like telling me like, oh well, like sometimes Trump says some kind of funny things, but I mean like we can't take him seriously. This is the president of the United States of
I'm not
America.
saying I'm not saying you can't take him seriously. I'm
That's
just saying that
exactly what you just said. You said like, oh well, he says a lot of stuff, but like he's not actually doing it right now, so that's okay. Well, when the president of the United States is making statements that are attacking my core constitutional freedoms, so for instance, saying the press is the enemy of the people, criticizing somebody for protesting, like ruthlessly attacking private entities for protesting and saying that they're enemies of the United States, like this is stuff saying that if you burn the American flag, you should have your citizen revoked, like your right to protest the government. Like these are all things that sound pretty authoritarian to me.
are those authoritarian though. I don't know. You might not like them. I don't think they're like strictly authoritarian so much.
Well,
Just
I
things you
mean,
don't
we
like.
can wiki the definition, but my understanding is that like an authoritarian is somebody that favors like a very
Sees
strong.
memes of production Nathaniel's
Hold on.
tiny.
Somebody that like favors like very strong like centralization of powers and typically disregards things like the press or other things that are like critical of the government. Typically wants to mobilize things under like a single party. Authoritarianism. It's a term political scientists use for a worldview that values orderliness and authority and distrusts outsiders and social change. It's a form of government. It is characterized by strong central powers and limited political freedoms. Individual economic or personal freedoms are subordinate to the state, and there's no constitutional accountability under an authoritarian regime. This lack of accountability is also something we kind of see when we see Trump, constantly attacking the special investigator, which I think should also make people kind of worried. It's kind of strange that he keeps saying the entire investigation is fake when that fake investigation has turned up more indictments than any of the recent Republican charade investigations have, such as the multiple Benghazi things or the Hillary Clinton email thing.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, I can see your point there, maybe, but let me take a look at this real quick. Do you think Trump is like operating outside of constitutional accountability when he does that stuff? Because I mean, you think he's
I think
like
we're skirting the
inflexible in
edges,
his
but
stance?
no, I don't think I don't think yet he is. I mean, we'll really see things if an indictment for Trump Jr. comes along, but I think he's still for the most part functioning within, from a legal sense, from what he's capable of doing.
Is it looking
Arguably,
likely that Trump Jr.? I haven't kept up with that with him.
I've heard stories, but I think that's what people are saying. But
Hmm. Interesting. Well, that'll be interesting for sure if that happens. That'll be a real shit show. That'll be fun to watch. Um, hmm. Yeah. See, like I don't think he really fits this definite. Maybe like a little bit. Like you could argue like he's creeping in on it, but it's not like he's not like solidly authoritarian. he might be like,
Well, not yet. I think the
authoritarian
institutions are
tendencies, maybe.
stopping him, but I think that given his ability to rewrite things, I think he would absolutely be solidly authoritarian. I mean, like,
Oh, I don't know. I think you're really jumping the gun there.
I
You're
mean,
saying
he
you're like attributing a
literally,
lot of stuff.
while running for president, kept repeating that he was going to lock up his political opponents. And if he wasn't going to make it, he was ready to blame illegal immigrants voting. So he was willing to undermine our process of voting, and he was threatening to lock up a political opponent. How does that
Did,
not sound
wait,
authoritarian to you?
well, slow down a second.
What?
Just political opponents plural, or are we talking about just Hillary for the law?
Hillary Clinton.
Just her, yeah, but like he wasn't like in his mind. I guess you could say she like was guilty of like very specific crimes that
Yeah,
would
what you
merit
just
being
said
locked
is
up, right?
authoritarian because she wasn't declared guilty of any crime, so why should he want to lock her up?
Well, okay, like, he wanted to like investigate her, and then
He was already,
court would
first of all,
find
the
her guilty.
president doesn't have the power to investigate. That's like given to like the DOJ. The FBI already did their
Yeah.
investigation and they found nothing wrong. So what is he going to investigate her again and again and again?
They didn't find nothing wrong. They found Comey's testimony in front of Congress, right? He
Yeah.
said she like did a lot of things that were like, uh, that like she
Did the
was like
DOJ
breaking security
did the
things or whatever.
DOJ bring charges to Hillary Clinton?
No, but it wasn't because she did nothing wrong. It's because he concluded that it was because of like incompetence on her or like technical
Okay, so nothing
illiteracy, not
illegally
because it
done.
was
No, nothing was
malicious.
illegally done. So then why would you have Trump out here screaming, "Lock her up, lock her up"?
He was doing that before the Comey
Sure,
thing.
but why? Like that doesn't make you a little. That doesn't feel weird that like your current head of state was in the process of running for head of state, threatening to lock up his political opponent in jail. Like,
If he'd like, after taking office, actually taken steps to do that, it might. But I mean, he hasn't done anything about it since then. Which is what I like. This is an example of what I mean when I say he like says a lot of shit and then doesn't act on it. It's like,
okay, but he
has
has
he done
acted on
anything to
some things.
Clinton?
I mean, we had the whole visa thing. We had the banning immigrants from 7 different countries things. We had everything going on with DACA. We had his attempt to ban transgender people from the military. We've got his continual pushes to build a wall along the southern
Yeah,
border. We've got
sure.
the defunding, the gunning of the mandate for the ACA. Like, just because he hasn't done everything that he could doesn't mean that he hasn't done anything bad, and it doesn't mean that he would try to do more if he couldn't. Like,
That
you're
big list of things you
infantilizing.
just
You're what?
that big list of things you just listed. Those are like things you don't like, and that's fine. You could be against those things, but they're not like it's not authoritarian to say that like you're gonna make certain people or certain countries not allowed people. Sorry, people from certain
I
countries
would
not allowed to
argue
come
that
to your
the
country.
travel ban that he tried to put or that he pushed, I think it was defended that he did, and he said it was for our national security. I would argue that was kind of authoritarian. Instead of getting that travel ban approved by Congress or anything, he did it under the sole discretion using his presidential powers because he has the ability to ban immigrants in times of crisis or whatever if he thinks there's a threat to
So
the
that
nation. That
I
felt
mean,
kind
the
of a
president
yeah.
that's a power vested to the president by the Constitution. So like,
Sure, but
I
like,
mean,
is there really a threat to the country from these other 7 countries in immigration, or do you think he was doing it because he wanted to, stick it to the Muslims? I mean, if I go by all of the rhetoric that he said before, and the fact that nobody from these countries, was banned recently, and that we don't have countries like Saudi Arabia on the list, like I don't know, it seems like
well, that's another thing. Like, I don't know if you can argue to stick it to the Muslims thing when like these big, like super, what
sure.
you
So
might
I
say,
asked him
dangerous
stick it
Muslim
to the
countries aren't even on there.
Sure. So I asked stick it to the Muslims because he literally said he wanted to ban all Muslims coming into the United States. And when Giuliani helped him draft this, he said Trump was looking for a legal way to ban Muslims from the United States. And when he did draft this, he seemed to target a lot of massive Muslim majority countries from entering the United States. And he said that he wanted to make exceptions for Christians. So that's my basis for that. Maybe I'm going a little bit too far, or I mean, I feel like I can make a pretty solid argument for it.
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I don't know like the specifics of how they drew up that agreement, so I can't really say anything too much about that. But even then, like, how do you think that's authoritarian? Like that specific example.
Well, when the president takes it on himself to enact social change in the United States, like reducing the number of Muslims coming in instead of passing it by way of Congress, it seems like he wants to do things on his own, which kind of feels authoritarian to me, is when you go past your institutions in order to get something done to
But
protect
he's
the
not
country.
going past his institutions. That's
He did. He
one
did
of
it
the
via
things the
executive
president can
order.
do,
Well,
which is
kind of.
within his. Okay, maybe it's like a little bit on the edge, but it's still within like what the president is allowed to do according to the
Yeah, I mean,
Constitution. He's
like
not
it
going
kind of is.
beyond
It's like
his office's
stretched. It's
limits.
stretched pretty far. So I guess like you're one of those people that's like, until Trump is literally like murdering people, nothing is authoritarian. I wish I had like a Twitter feed of yours because I'm really curious what you said. If you're like this generous with Democratic candidates in the past,
Yeah,
in the
you know
United
my
States.
Reddit account. You can go through that if you want.
I mean, I could. I'm too lazy. But like when well, because I don't honestly, I really don't care. But like I hear
Yeah.
that people will jump on like one or two lines that like a Democrat says, and it's like, oh well, this is evidence of the fucking Pizzagate raping kids.
Okay,
This is
look,
evidence of this.
whoa.
But like I feel like I've given you like 9 or 10 like fairly strong points about how Trump leaned towards authoritarian, and all I'm getting back is like, well, he just says things. You can't
I
take him
think
seriously.
most
like,
of your points are kind of wishy-washy. Like it's like, it's kind of on the edge, maybe a little bit, kind of, but it's not like a solid, like really good example.
Well, it's
Where I'm
not really
coming from.
good because maybe we view political freedoms like a lot differently. So, like for me, when the president of the United States is attacking the free press by saying you're an enemy of the people, that's a killer line in the sand for me. That's not like a kind of. That's like, to me, I feel like if I was talking to another intelligent person who was being intellectually honest, they would say, yes, that is insanely worrying. So I don't know if because you live in the United Kingdom, you guys do political freedoms differently there, or maybe in Lebanon you did or whatever. But like to me, that's like a really obvious, like, oh, the president is criticizing the media for doing reporting and constantly calls the media fake news. That's like an easy. Like, that is fucking insane to me. That is, like, massively authoritarian for a U.S. president to do that. But, I mean, like, you feel like it's wishy-washy because it's just talk,
no.
or...
Here's the key difference, right? Which is, so what you said earlier about like talk is actions when you talk is an action when you're the president. I think that's sort of where we disagree, because like I don't think saying those things is necessarily that bad until you like start to act on them in some way, even in like a small way. So yeah, I don't know if we're there yet. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, how about
Or
a
I don't know if
small way,
Trump's
like
there
getting Acosta thrown out because he doesn't like it when he gets asked questions that he can't answer?
yet. I mean, if it's just Acosta, like all the rest of the press is in there, I don't think that's a big deal. It's not like is like a press release, right? Or a press
Okay,
conference.
yeah, I mean, I
sorry.
don't think there's anything, like, until Trump is literally, like, hanging political opponents in the street, I don't think you'll have a problem with anything he
We
does.
don't have to go that far. When he like,
Okay, when he what?
yeah. Okay, well, let me think of a good example here. Okay, so the libel law thing, right? If he went and he like changed it so that you don't have to be, or you don't have to. Sorry, the press doesn't have to know at the time of publishing that what they're saying is false. It just has to come out that it's false later. That would be going too far. That'd be like an example.
You're already you would destroy the entire United States if that gets passed. Like, do you understand?
That's what I was saying. That's an example.
Yeah, so
of
that's what. So
something
it's basically
terrible.
what I just said. He needs to be hanging people in the street, pretty much. Like that's the level that it has to be for you
Okay,
to
it
care.
doesn't have to pass. He has to suggest that as
He's already
what he
suggested it. What do you mean? He
wants. No,
constantly
he suggested he wants to expand it. He hasn't suggested that specific.
because he's the president. He can't. I don't think the president
I
can
know,
propose
he hasn't. That's what I'm
legislation.
saying.
He can't like go to. He can't. Or I could be
He
wrong.
can't propose legislation. He can go on Twitter and say, "This is what I want," without proposing it in an official.
He's already said that's what he wants. He wants to open up
What?
libel laws. What do you mean?
Yeah, he didn't say he wants that example that I gave. He said he wants to open them up. That could mean anything. We don't know what that means exactly.
I mean, like, I don't know what he has to say. Like, Trump renews pledge to take a strong look at libel laws. Like, what? So he has to say, I want to make it so that if you publish any, like,
I mean, it has to be something that looks like it might be dangerous, like significantly dangerous. I don't know. He hasn't given a specific like.
earlier this year,
outline of
Trump
how he
called
wants it to be
libel laws
changed.
a sham and a disgrace shortly after his lawyers had threatened to a possible libel suit in an unsuccessful attempt to block publication of a book that's critical of his campaign.
What are you reading right now?
It's I don't know. They're quoting it's the L.A. Times.
Hold on, I'll find this.
Earlier this year, Trump called libel laws, this is a quote, a sham and a disgrace, end quote, shortly after his lawyers had threatened a possible libel suit in an unsuccessful attempt to block publication of another book, Michael Wolff's Fire and Fury, inside the Trump White House. He then renewed his campaign promise to, quote, open up, end quote, America's libel laws, pledging, quote, to take a strong look at them, end quote, or take a strong look, end quote, at them. Like,
LA Times is blocked in the UK. Great.
I mean,
Whatever. I found the quote somewhere else. But yeah, he just said, I mean, it depends how he wants to expand them, I guess. If it was like, if he said, I want like something dangerous, I'd be like, okay, yeah. Now he's
well,
crossing the
every
line, but,
single
I'm
time
still
he
thinking-
talks about expanding libel laws, it's not because a big lie is published about them. It's usually because people are saying things about him that he doesn't like. That's the problem. How is this not indicative of the type of libel laws he'd like to publish? Like, if a child comes up to me and the child says, hey, can I have ice cream? And I go, no. And they said, really? I want ice cream. And I go, no. And then I turn to someone and I say, man, I really want to make it so that you can murder people for bothering you in this country. What do you think that person is going to assume? Wow, you're doing it because that kid asked you the same question twice. You want to murder that fucking kid. And then if I were to go, whoa, no, I was just saying in general, I'd like to make it easier to kill people. Not that kid in particular. It's like, what do you mean? Come on. Like, Trump has constantly talked about opening libel laws and shit because he doesn't like it when people are posting mean stories about them. Not because things have been said that are total falsehoods. That's just not true.
So, earlier when you said you think I'm infantilizing Trump, I think you're going like in too far in the opposite direction, which is like you're attributing like a lot of malice where there's not really strong evidence.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I mean, because he has to hang people in the street. I don't think we can pass this. Like, that's what you're at. Like, if he's not actually hanging people in the street, like what you just said is actually unbelievably stupid to me. So when people are posting bad stories about Trump and Trump's own lawyers are trying to keep books from being published, and then Trump says he wants to open up the libel laws, you don't think his goal when he says that, what he's saying is he wants to make it impossible for those books to be published? You think that's too much of a jump for me?
I haven't seen anything about him like specifically trying to block a book. Where?
Okay.
I guess that website's blocked. Is there
Fire and Fury Trump lawyers. Let's Google. CNBC.com. Trump lawyer demands a halt to the publication of tell-all book Fire and Fury, seeks full retraction and apology. A lawyer for President Trump demands an apology and a retraction of material from an explosive new book by Michael Wolff about the White House. So, I mean...
Hold on 1 second. Okay, so what was your point with this? Sorry.
Well, I mean, if these are the types of things that he's trying to get not published, and he's talking about opening up libel laws so it'd be easier to sue publishers or sue people of the press for making things about him, it seems pretty reasonable to assume that he's doing it because of stuff like this.
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable that, assuming he's right that this book is like, telling lies about him, that he'd want to stop it from being.
Okay.
Or he'd want to retract.
Why
it
would we assume
like
he's right when he constantly lies?
Just for the sake of argument, dude. But like,
well, I don't want to do for the sake of argument. I have real life empirical examples that I can point to. I don't need hypotheticals. I know that Donald Trump tells lies constantly, and I know that Donald Trump has not been able to successfully call out the press on telling a lie fucking ever. It's usually just when they say mean or bad things about them.
Okay, look, or not everything, but if like most of the stuff in this book is true, and he's like looking for a retraction and an apology, despite that, then yeah, okay, then I'll say fine. That's going too far. But I don't know enough about this book to say whether that, any of that's true.
Well, it sounds like, the book was published and his lawyers didn't get anywhere, and all of these things, according to Michael, were sourced pretty fucking hardcore. This was the guy, or wait, am I thinking of the book Fear? Fire and Fury. Oh, I'm thinking of the book Fear. I imagine Fire and Fury is probably mostly true as well, since it seems like no court action was ever taken against this. But Trump said the same thing about the book Fear, where he said that it was horrible and it was a bunch of lies and whatnot. But that guy sourced so many statements from inside the White House, and he even tried to get a hold of Trump himself, who ignored it until right before the book was being published.
I'd have to look more into the book. I don't know much about this book, so.
Okay. I know that President Obama never called Fox News fake news, and Trump was literally spearheading the fucking birther movement, saying that, here's the thing, okay? Wouldn't Donald Trump be eligible to be sued for libel, if anything, when he kept saying that Obama himself wasn't born in the United States? Wouldn't that be the best example of somebody spreading fake news and deliberately lying and being malicious to hurt somebody's reputation?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I said it goes both ways, earlier.
But do you think he would see himself as being under those same laws, that he would open himself to being sued?
He might not, be thinking that far ahead, but so.
Okay.
Then your argument is that he's stupid, not that he's an authoritarian.
Well, he's a stupid authoritarian. You can be both. You don't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, you can, but those are two different things, right? You can give,
Yeah, you can be being tall and being white are two different things, but you could still be both at the same time.
But if you can't use evidence of him being stupid and then say, well, that makes him authoritarian.
I could see somebody's head over a wall and say, look, they're white, and I know they're tall because I can see them at the same time.
What does that? What does that have to do
The
with?
same piece of evidence can count for multiple things. Trump can come out and stupidly say, I want to be able to sue members of the press, and that could be evidence of him both being stupid and an authoritarian.
Sure, but like, and I don't think that works in this case
Why not?
because I don't know. Expanding libel laws, going back to where we started, is like
The president of
not
the United
inherently
States wanted
authoritarian.
to
I don't
sue the
think.
free press to keep them from publishing bad stories about him. Yeah, we're back at where we started, which I think is like
Yeah.
pretty easy authoritarianism. Like when your head of state wants to be able to file charges against the media to keep them from saying mean things about him.
Can we go back to the original like question for a second, which was
Sure.
like the free speech thing? Do you think limiting libel counts as being against free speech?
Yeah, because we have to look past just the
Not
initial law.
expanding libel. Sorry.
Yes. Because what's going to happen is you create an effect where people become scared or afraid to publish. This is why our libel laws are the way they are, is because you don't want to make it so that people are scared of filing, of publishing material about public figures because they'll just get sued.
Right, but there has to be a balance, right? You can't just have no libel laws, correct?
Sure, you're using weasel words now, though. There has to be a balance. Of course, there has to be a balance with everything. But I mean, like,
Okay, great. So can you then argue that maybe like potentially the balance is off and it needs to be adjusted, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're against free speech if you want to adjust it?
yeah, that's what we've been trying to do for half this conversation. If you want to make the argument that the balance is off, that's fine. Can you show me a case where our current libel laws are failing us in regards to the president having false or misleading stories intentionally published about him by the media? And you weren't able to do that at all. So I don't see how you can say that the balance needs to be changed.
Like, I don't have that on hand, but I could find some if you want.
Yeah, I would
You know.
I'm very curious. Yeah, I would love to hear any time where the media is intentionally just telling these horrible lies about Trump. Yeah. But I mean, like, it's telling that you just kind of like lend credence to him immediately, that you don't know of any time the media's ever done this, but you just trust Trump for saying it, even though you yourself
I
admitted.
gave you an example.
No, wait, what example?
The thing with his kids and the birth.
Yeah, that we saw bloggers and random tweeters post.
I saw that in the news article. I'll find it.
Okay,
Not
I
now,
mean, like,
but
that's a
later.
pretty
I'll find
big
it.
thing. I feel like I should be able to find that in a news site, but
Yeah, I mean, we looked for like 2 or 3 minutes, but like.
well, I feel like
give
it would
10,
show
15
up
minutes or
like
so.
right away. But I mean, like,
Hey,
if you can find me all of the
Google
what?
those results, man. Haven't you heard like the whole thing? No, I'm just kidding. It's not really.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, I love you, buddy. Be careful, okay?
All right, let's see. Real quick. Do you have like a set schedule for? I don't really follow you, but do you have a set schedule for streaming, or do you just stream when you feel?
I just stream like 10 hours a day. You'll catch me on at some point, but
All right.
all right. Have fun, buddy.
All right. See you, man.
Fuck, I fucking hate my fucking life. I don't know why I do these fucking conversations. Fucking end me, fam. It's like, I'll take two people. One person will walk over and he'll poke another kid, and people will be like, that dude was trying to fucking murder that kid. It's insane. Like, you could see from the way that he poked him that he was trying to kill that fucking kid. He was going for a pressure point. I think that was some Aikido shit. And then it's like another person like punches a kid as hard as they could in the face. Like, okay, well, hold on. Like, was it really a punch? Like, I mean, maybe the kid walked in front of his fist. Like, you know, punches hurt both people too. I don't think he would intentionally punch him. Like, he could break his own fingers doing that. And, you know, like, are punches even... And it's like, dude, like, what the fuck am I even fucking arguing with? What the fuck is happening right now? Like, here are clear-cut examples of Trump attacking pretty basic constitutional freedoms. Like, okay, well, you know, sometimes he says some things, but they don't really matter. It's just what he's saying, and it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about?